Welcome to the Visually Hidden Selects podcast, where we discuss an independent approach to the art of cinema and explore the subtext of various featured films. My name is Peter O'Brien, and I am an independent filmmaker, author, and musician.
My name is David Bendler. I'm a film and stage actor and a pop culture enthusiast.
I'm Anne Milleville, a French screenwriter and producer.
This week's VHS selection is Rushmore from 1998, directed by Wes Anderson and starring Jason Schwartzman, Bill Murray, and Olivia Williams. If you have not seen Rushmore, then please head over to the Visually Hidden YouTube channel, subscribe so you don't miss any future recommendations, check out the VHS video, watch the film, and then come on back to the podcast because we will be discussing it openly with spoilers. Here we go. I don't know about you guys, I can only really speak for myself on this one, but I adore this movie. I really, really do. I don't say that often or about a lot of movies. There are movies that I really, really like, but this one, it has this kind of charm about it that whenever I watch it, it actually makes me happy. There are scenes and there are sequences and there are interactions with the characters and just funny lines throughout that really genuinely lift me up. This is kind of a feel-good movie for me in a lot of different ways, and it's been with me for a very long time. I saw it in the theater when it first came out in 1998, and when I first saw it, it was very different compared to a lot of other films that I had seen up to that point, because Wes Anderson was a very fresh, unique cinematic voice, and it really wasn't until like Royal Tenenbaums that you kind of really got the dots that you could start connecting. It's like, oh, okay, this is how this guy tells stories, and this is how this guy presents stories, and this is how this guy makes his characters. Okay, now I get it. And then it just kind of developed from there. But Rushmore is really, for me, my favorite Wes Anderson film. I'm not going to say it's his best because to each their own, but for me, I don't think it gets much better than Rushmore. There are some good ones in there, but I will always go back to this one. This is my desert island disc. As far as Wes Anderson's filmography goes, I need this film. I don't need the other ones, but I need Rushmore to just pick me up when I'm down.
Who could argue with that?
Did I oversell it?
I feel the exact same way. It's so funny that to hear, because I knew you liked this movie, you knew I liked this movie, but to hear you say some of the things you just said, you hit the nail right on the head. I always feel a bit of hopefulness when the movie's over, or I feel a bit lighter, or like lifted up or happier when the movie's over, and that doesn't happen all the time with movies. There are movies that I laugh my ass off watching, right, that I think are hilarious, but this movie I've seen like probably 1,000 times. I mean, so many times, and I still get the same feeling after I watch. It's like, man, it did it again.
Yeah,
it didn't disappoint. So I mean, that's like, I could go on and on, but Anne, what do you think?
Yeah, before you recommended it, I'd never heard about it, to be frank with you. And that's crazy because Wes Anderson is well known in France, because I don't know if you noticed it, but in the other Wes Anderson's movies, he kind of praises French culture, a little bit in this one, but in other movies, the music is often a French music. I don't know if you noticed, but French people, we like to talk about ourselves, so that's why we noticed that. I'm glad you made me discover it, and it's a very pleasant movie. As you said, it tells a story, and that's something that I like about Wes Anderson. It's always a storyteller. You really feel the storytelling in each of his movies. And the music also, from the very beginning, the opening credits, it's so such musicality in his movies that you really enjoy watching them. Really pleasant to watch, and the characters are so moving, also so touching. So yeah, it was really pleasant to discover. So thank you so much for that.
I feel like this film in particular is kind of a perfect storm, and it's a really good balance between Wes Anderson as the director and co-writer, and then Owen Wilson as the co-writer. Their combination, I feel, is unmatched in this particular film. In Bottle Rocket, you can see elements that would later develop in terms of their storytelling and their characters and the development. And in Royal Tenenbaums, because I'm singling those out because those are the three that they co-wrote. And honestly, I would be over the moon if Owen Wilson and Wes Anderson co-wrote another script together, because I feel like those are among the strongest of his filmography and Owen Wilson's filmography. Honestly, I mean, he's a fine actor. I always enjoy seeing him in stuff, but he wanted to be a writer. That was what he wanted to do, and it was only out of necessity that he wound up acting in the short film of Bottle Rocket, which then got picked up and developed into the feature. I mean, as you get into Royal Tenenbaums, you can see the quirkiness kind of creeping in that would dominate a lot of Anderson's later films, but there's still that like anchor in the humor and the innocence that I think is what Owen Wilson really brings to the writing side of it.
Yeah, I love them as a combo together. There's a whimsical charm and slight goofiness in certain cases, but he really manages to capture, no matter how fantastical the plot may be, he manages to capture this certain amount of grounded heart, which I think makes the characters and the movies and his stories resonate with people for a very long time, which I think is a very unique thing, considering most of his later films start to become these massive ensemble movies with top tier, I mean, A-list actor after A-list actor. It's kind of insane when you think about that. And the fact that he gets to pull that off, I think it's because of his charm and because of the quality of what he's putting out, because I don't know if people could afford that type of cast. If it was another type of movie, I think they take the lesser money because they want to be a part of those films. I think that's just a testament to who Wes Anderson is as a movie maker and as a collaborator.
But I think if he lasts so long in the industry, it's because for every movie he makes, you never know what to expect in his movies. And I mean, there's always something you're gonna find in each movie, like moving characters or well-written stories, but the stories are so atypical from a movie to another. I mean, I feel that way. So that's why it works so well for him, because every time you're gonna watch a Wes Anderson movie, you know you're not gonna be disappointed, but you don't know what you're gonna see.
I wouldn't say that I've never been disappointed in a Wes Anderson film, but he does have a mean cinematic curveball. You're right. When you're watching his films, you don't exactly always know what to expect, and sometimes it will take a rapid turn, and sometimes it's a dark turn. Sometimes it's a violent turn. Sometimes it's a very, very dramatic turn, and then it kind of course corrects, so then it becomes a part of the world that he's building and unfolding. You know what else is really interesting? There's other filmmakers that have a style, but they've all kind of dabbled in more mainstream realms. You know, you think of like Robert Rodriguez or even Kevin Smith and Christopher Nolan. They've all kind of done like a mainstream, straightforward film. And Wes Anderson has really kind of managed to exist in this mini major microcosm of filmmaking where he makes these little pictures for not a lot of money, but he gets this incredible pool of talent involved that broadens the appeal. And then I think actors really like working with him because, as I mentioned in the video, every character is actually a character. So as an actor, they really get to explore a persona and a personality that is not just cookie cutter for their type. You know, and so it's like, oh, cool, yeah, this time I get to be this kind of a person, and this time I get to be that kind of a person, and now I'm the tortured artist, and now I'm the, deranged psychopath, and now I'm the eclectic, quiet one in the back, and there's all this variety in his films and in his stories, and Rushmore is really the blueprint for that, because you see it in Max Fischer right from the beginning of this film, where he's the president of this, and he's the founder of this, and he has all these different interests, and they're like as random as you could get. The Stamp and Coin Collection Society and the Trap and Skeet Club and the, what is it, the Kung Fu or the Taekwondo, whatever the martial art that he's practicing, and then fencing and then go-karts. And throughout the film, there's even more, and the Max Fischer players. And through that, he gets to explore characters and all these different scenarios. So it's a very imaginative world that I think actually stems from Rushmore.
I agree. Wes Anderson's not unlike Woody Allen in that sense. Like he gets to kind of exist in his own plane, do his own thing, and nobody really bothers him for it. And both guys get tremendous talent to be in their films, and just it almost seems like Hollywood just leaves them alone.
And in the VHS video, Pete, you talked about the fact that Owen Wilson wrote this scenario. And to be frank with you, I know Owen Wilson as an actor, but I don't know much about the guy because I guess you in America you saw some interviews of him. So I was wondering if Max Fischer is a little Owen Wilson when he was a teenager, or if it's a really made-up character.
I think there's always a little bit that bleeds in from experience. They filmed Rushmore at the school that Wes Anderson attended in Texas. And Owen Wilson also attended a private school, and much like Max Fischer, he was expelled from that school. And his father was actually on the board of directors for the school. So I don't think that sat too well at home. But yeah, Owen Wilson, I've seen interviews. I've watched the film with a commentary by him and Wes Anderson and Jason Schwartzman, so there's a little bit of insight to be gleaned from that. But I think Max Fischer is a composite between Wes Anderson and Owen Wilson. I think they both brought their own experiences and ideas to it and then just molded it and let Jason Schwartzman run with it, because I think their original inception of the character was a little bit different, but when Jason Schwartzman came in, he just kind of knocked their socks off, and rightfully so. He is fantastic in this film. A lot of it's on the page, and then as any collaboration, goes, it's a balance between what's on the page, what the director wants, and then what the actor actually possesses and can bring to it.
The movie has such an innocence to it, even though the characters inside the film don't always have the most innocent of intentions, but it still comes off as innocent. I think that's a very, very impressive thing to pull off. I don't think many people can pull that off, and that's a credit to the writing, the directing, and the performances. I mean, the performances in this, top to bottom, are fantastic. I love all the performances in this movie. Just think about that duality of, the characters could be mean-spirited at times or have selfish motivations for things, but yet there's this underlining innocence throughout the entire film, which is very impressive.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I think, as I mentioned before, I think Owen Wilson really kind of brings to it, because after you get out of Tenenbaums, like, his films can get a little bit darker in some regard. And the film starts in a dream, solving the world's hardest geometry problem. And then he wakes up in the chapel, and now we're introduced to the underachiever that he is with these aspirations. So it's this constant unfolding of the character that I think helps this film remain captivating and endearing.
Yeah, I think there's Max Fischer in all of us, right? There's a part of that kid in everybody. And I think that's what Bloom finds attractive. That's the spark that he used to have that he doesn't have anymore. And I think that's what intrigues all the other characters in the film and the audience alike. It's like there's that spark of youthful hopefulness and possibility, and that sometimes we lose that. And then I think you just want to be around that, and maybe that's why the movie resonates with us. You're immediately on the side of a dreamer. I think most people are. Even something so absurd and crazy as Pee-wee's Big Adventure, right? He starts off in a dream. He's winning that race. And so it kind of is a nice mechanism to get you on the side of the main character, or at least relating to them in a certain way that's like, hey, I know, I get that feeling. I want to be more than I am sometimes, and that's a universal quality that I think will never ever go away.
I agree with you that we all have something from Max. Maybe when you get older, you have admiration for this kid, because when you think about it, as Pete says in the VHS video, he's not a quitter. He has ambition. When he believes in something, he wants to go for it, and that's something that not all of us had the courage to do. So I think now we're getting older, we see this kid, and maybe with envy, maybe we wish we were like him when we were teenagers too.
I always like the scene where he's convinced Mr. Bloom to fund the aquarium, and then Rosemary doesn't show up, and he just walks away, and Max is there yelling at him like, "You're a quitter, man. How'd you get to be so rich? Blah, 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 blah." It's like right there is Max's character, and that's where it really jumped out to me from the screen. It's like, yeah, Max doesn't see roadblocks. He sees hurdles, but he overcomes them. He's constantly moving forward, which is probably why he's the captain of the JV track and cross country or whatever the heck.
He's such an interesting character. I mean, top to bottom, with how mature he can be and how poised he could be at times, and then how immature he could be at times. And I think that doesn't stop. I don't know, like, that doesn't stop with adolescence. I think at one point, or another in our adult lives, we could possibly say, yeah, I was probably a little immature that I did that. Should have done that. But for me, like, he's probably my favorite character in all of Wes Andersonville. That's why I always come back to this film.
And I like when we see the immaturity of Herman sometimes, the scene where he doesn't dare to approach Rosemary, he hide behind a tree, or when he's really excited when he gets out from Rosemary's house, and when he enters his car, the adult in the car is Max in the back actually, and you see the immaturity in his face. So I think it's always funny to see that sometimes the roles are reversed.
Yeah, they are definitely a dynamic duo, to borrow a phrase. They complement each other really well. Together, they are a pretty fascinating and unstoppable person and force. But divided, you see how they can very easily fall to pieces. You would think like, oh, well, Herman is the adult. He's accomplished. He's a businessman. He's a millionaire. He's very successful. But he has family problems. He has confidence problems. He has all of these different things. And then Max, he's the kid. But everything that Herman doesn't have, Max has, and vice versa. So when they come together, it really is fantastic. And the fact that they were able to find each other, I know it's a story and they were made to find each other, but it's the illustration of that point, is that you find the right people in your life and you can accomplish anything. And now a word from our sponsor.
This podcast is brought to you by Visually Hidden Selects. If you're looking for a spoiler-free recommendation of a classic film with professional analysis and insight, check out Visually Hidden Selects, exclusively on the Visually Hidden YouTube channel.
I think Anne mentioned something really good before about the music right from the beginning, and that also helps set the tone for the film. The composer of the original score is Mark Mothersbaugh from Devo, and he's a very eclectic composer and musician. He did a lot of the early Wes Anderson films, including Bottle Rocket, Royal Tenenbaums, and Life Aquatic. But if you look at his filmography, I mean, he did the Rugrats theme song and everything he's ever done with Devo over the last, 45 years plus. He's just a very accomplished musician. And right from the beginning, as Anne said, the opening titles, the music kicks in and you're like whisked away to this setting and this scenario, and the score really taps into the character of Max, but then the soundtrack, like the musical song recorded selections, just amplify that. The score is kind of like his heart, and then the soundtrack is really his persona. And I think that's a really interesting aural balance.
The pop music side of things, there's some more popular choices, there's some less popular choices, but I feel like, for my money, probably one of the best soundtracks ever.
Oh, absolutely.
Ever recorded, because every song really just helps the story along. There's certain songs that when I hear them, all I think about is Rushmore. Mm-hmm. And not enough can be said about how good the musical choices on that soundtrack are.
Max is really a very emotionally charged character, as most teenagers are. I love the scene when they're at dinner and he's had his whiskey. And, I remember the first time I saw it, it was a little uncomfortable. I remember sitting in the theater when he's all drunk and belligerent. He's like, I wrote a hit play. Yeah. Holy shit. Yeah, like that's a kid. That's a child reacting. Whenever I do something good in my life, I'll always turn to my wife or whoever's around and think, well, I wrote a hit play and directed it, so I'm not sweating it either.
I think you said something great in the video. This was kind of the door opening for the later years of Bill Murray's more serious acting choices. I think he's brilliant in this movie because we know he's funny. We know he can ad-lib and he can make jokes and he can go for days. But some of the greatest stuff from him in this film is the stuff when he's not speaking, when he's just giving a look, or he's thinking about something, or the cigarette's just hanging from his face, or he jumps in the pool. It's just, he really conjures up this deep sea of sadness inside of himself, and it's overwhelming at times, but it's beautiful because he's still a good person. Some of his small moments, the choking on the whiskey, when he's watching the play and he puts the fist up, and
he's got like the tear
he's got the
welling up.
He's got the tear. There's so many of those tiny, 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 brilliant moments that in the hands of any other comedic actor, I don't think it comes off the same. Could be funny, but it doesn't come off the same.
One of my favorites is when the very, very beginning, when he first meets Max and then Max walks away and he's talking to Brian Cox and he says, he's a bright little guy. And Brian Cox says, he's one of the worst students we've got. And you can see right before the cut, Bill Murray like smiles. Yeah. And right there, it's like, that's almost like the lock-in for the character. It's like, my kind of kid.
Part that never fails to kill me. His sons are in the car with him. He picks them up and he's like, pull your head out of your ass. And that he just that reach back to grab him every single time, it crushes me. I know it's coming, and it just because he's so quiet and still, and he just that jerk back.
Yeah, the pounce.
Yeah, so good.
One of my favorite scenes is the one you said, Steve, when he jump into the pool, because for me it's really like the most touching, sad clown you can have in a movie. He's funny and it's drama at the same time. And what I love about this character, it's a businessman, he's a father. He gets close to a kid as a friend. I mean, he become a friend with a kid. And they play, I don't know if you say that, they play tit for tat, that's what you say. When Max tried to get revenge and he gets revenge of Max. It's so crazy to think that a businessman, a father can do that, but it's so credible when you watch Bill Murray do that. So I really love this character. I love this actor.
Now, would you think that this was Jason Schwartzman's first movie?
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's nuts that much range can come out of someone who's never done he carries the movie basically.
But to be totally fair, he comes from the Coppola dynasty.
He has a pedigree.
It's not like he, lived in a cave for like 15 years and then they found him and put him in a movie. His mother is Talia Shire from Rocky and The Godfather. His uncle is Francis Ford Coppola, who we've discussed, for The Outsiders, and he's also done The Godfather and Apocalypse Now, among others, The Conversation. His cousin is Sofia Coppola. His other cousin is Nicolas Cage, who is like the king of range and insanity. So you can see the extremes of where to go and where not to go. It's not like he was just a drummer in a band. He may not have done anything on screen or stage before, but he had been exposed to it probably his entire life. But I think you're right. He does just crush in a way that is unmatched, unparalleled. I can't imagine anybody else being that character. And I think part of it is because he was unknown. Mm-hmm. It's very easy to identify and connect with a character like we talked about with Superman, where there's no strings attached. Like the first time you meet Jason Schwartzman, he is Max Fischer. And so you're not meeting Jason Schwartzman, you're meeting Max Fischer, and that's the character.
Yeah. As great as Bill Murray is and as great as Jason Schwartzman was, Olivia Williams is so good in this movie. There's subtleties to what she's doing here. There's a softness and a gentleness, which I think it called for. But she's also strong at moments that she has to be.
Oh, she's incredibly strong as an overall character,
but without being overbearing about it.
Yeah.
It's just the perfect balance of that's just enough without seeming too harsh. Even when she's put in the most uncomfortable positions with these characters, it gives it just the amount that it needs.
Yeah, I love the way she plays the embarrassment she can have towards Max, but also the fact that she doesn't want to hurt him. And at the beginning, or maybe it's me, but at the beginning I didn't get that she was still struggling with the death of her husband. And there's a moment you really understand that. And it's really touching when she says that she sees a bit of her husband in Max. You understand that she wanted to still have a link with her husband through him in a way. So I think she's a really complex character, and you don't get that at the beginning. At the beginning you focus maybe more on Max, which is normal, he's the main character. But suddenly you understand, there's a moment you understand that she's really more complex than she seems to be at the beginning.
I think another real credit to Olivia Williams' character and the performance is, in other hands, it could have been very easy to write her off, or like, because from the beginning we're on Max's side, right? He's our guy, he's our main character. So it could have been very easy to villainize her. But the three characters and the three actors are so well balanced and so well portrayed. They just come across where it's like you're never resentful towards any of them at any given moment. You identify with each of them as necessary for the plot and for the story and for their development. There's a movie called Kramer versus Kramer starring Dustin Hoffman and Meryl Streep. And every single time I hear or see or think about that movie, there's a part of my brain that goes, that fucking bitch. You know, I cannot help it. I have such resentment towards Meryl Streep in that film. And not Meryl Streep, but her character, because of the decisions that she made and the way she played them. Like, I cannot help it. I've watched it with my wife and she's like, well, I think you're being a little unfair. And it's like, you don't know what you're talking about right now. Are you watching the same movie?
That's so funny. I watched that a couple weeks ago. Yeah, I felt the same way.
And you never get that when Miss Cross is pushing Max away. Mm-hmm. You know, even though we're rooting for Max, like, we understand, like, no, she's a little too old for you, buddy. I mean, I understand you're a romantic and an idealist, but there's reality as well. And then even her relationships with Herman, you know, and like at the end when they're having coffee during the intermission, you know, it's like just like this like tender little moment where it's like they have their history, they have their past, but they've come together and we won't see where they'll go, but it's left up to us to determine like how this plays out for them. I love how the film comes to a close. And even the song selection there for the end credits, and that is like a perfect piece of punctuation. It just harmonizes so well in the soundtrack of the characters.
About Max's father, I feel like thanks to this character we have another topic in the movie that we didn't really talk about. It's class division. I don't know if you say that, but he's kind of ashamed at the beginning that his father is a barber. I mean, he's not saying that. He says that he's a famous surgeon or something like that. And at the end, when he introduced his father to Herman, I think it's you understand that he gets more adult on that point also, and he accepts who he is. I think it's a very good message in the movie.
Which leads to one of my favorite jokes in the movie when he says, "Oh, I'm a barber." When they're meeting people after the play, and he's like, "Oh, that's your brain surgeon." I get that a lot. Hilarious, hilarious line.
This film does have a very rich ensemble cast. It's just it doesn't have like the A-list names that would flock to Wes Anderson later on. You know, Bryan Cranston, Tom Hanks, Edward Norton, Willem Dafoe, all those people. Yeah, Cate Blanchett. This film has a very rich supporting cast of character actors. Brian Cox, who plays the headmaster of Rushmore Academy. If you look at his filmography, it is amazing. He was in Braveheart. He was the original Hannibal Lecter in Manhunter. He's in all of these crazy comedies like Super Troopers. He was in The Ring. He's just all over the map. And whenever he turns up, it's like, okay, I feel more confident in the film seeing Brian Cox in there, no matter what it is, because it's Brian Cox. And he's been around forever and he's been in all different kinds of things. Clearly, he knows what he's doing. I feel like I'm in like good hands when I see Brian Cox on board in a film.
Him and Allstate, you're in good hands, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and Seymour Cassel as well.
So
he's
good.
just a veteran character actor. He turns up again in Royal Tenenbaums and even in Life Aquatic as well. He has a small role. Pivotal but small, and yeah, just all these little characters. Even the Wilson brothers, Luke and I think it's Andrew is the older brother
Andrew,
who plays the baseball coach, and he was Future Man in Bottle Rocket.
I love the actor, and his name escapes me at the moment. I love the actor who plays Mr. Little Jeans.
Kumar.
I love that guy so much. His stuff in Bottle Rocket, his stuff in this, his little bits in Tannenbaums. Oh my God, some of my favorite stuff.
His son is the teacher in the beginning of the film.
Nice.
during the dream, that's Kumar's son, and he was also in Bottle Rocket. He worked at the bookstore that they robbed, but they were friends of Wes Anderson, and he would just stuck him in the movies. And then Kumar goes on to be in The Terminal, directed by Steven Spielberg. Think about that.
Yeah, I love that guy, man. He has some of my favorite lines from Wes Anderson movies come from him, or have to do with him. Like in Bottle Rocket, he's in there. I blew it. It's that simple, and it's just hilarious.
And I love how he's just slipped in. He's just raking the leaves, and it's like, "Good night, Mr. Little Jeans." And then when Herman's brakes have been cut and he's trying to stop the car, and he rolls to a stop, and Mr. Little Jeans just backs against the
with
wall,
the rake. Yeah.
And then he's standing there as Herman's filing the police report. And then later on at the end of the play when he's just doing his big laugh.
Yeah, the big laugh.
It's just those little touches of character sprinkled throughout that just give this film a richness. One of my laugh out loud favorite moments in this film is when Dirk confronts Herman in the parking lot. Mm-hmm. And he's like, "Sure, with friends like you, who needs friends?" And then he spits on the hood of his car.
I love the music at this moment.
Yes, it's a perfect storm. The music, the just the way it's shot, the intention. Does Max know? It's very espionage-like. It's so good.
And then just the punctuation at the end where Ronnie and Donnie are like locking the door on him, and he just snaps.
Unlock it!
Like he's just yeah. It's so well done because it is very realistic. It is very relatable for all the zaniness that's going on in this film. Max buying dynamite and shooting Buchan in the ear with the pellet gun, and all these elaborate plays that he's putting on, and the tit for tat back and forth between Herman and Max. There's a very strong foot in reality. Mm-hmm.
But I love the way the movie also pokes fun at genre type stuff like that. I saw you with the teacher. Does Max know? It's just that little espionage type of a feel. Or then when Max and Guggenheim get into it, and you see their shadows from the fire. It's very dramatic, and just I love those little touches.
Or the rendezvous on the parking garage, and he's like packed a lunch like a picnic.
And she accepts. That's what makes it work.
Yeah, that's the expression of adolescence, Everything is so serious when you are a teenager, and when something goes wrong, it's really a drama, And I really felt that way watching the movie.
Yeah, it's like everything's life and death when you're that age. Life and death. It's so good, But when he fakes the bike accident, and he climbs through the window, and he puts the tape in the tape player. Like he's just so prepared for this long con. Yeah. It's so good.
I love when he says with so much intensity that for love he saved Latin. I love when he said that, when he says that to Herman. And you, what did you do? I saved Latin for love. I love this scene because it's so insignificant that he saved Latin, but yeah.
Yeah, it's that conviction and that genuine sincerity that he has. Like, it diffuses the zaniness or the craziness or the inappropriateness of whatever happens to be going on at that moment, because there's that underlying almost cartoon craziness vibe where it's like so far-fetched, but it's really happening. Like, these are real people that we are looking at, through this lens and through this frame. And so it's just the absurdity never exceeds the boundaries of reality.
The feeling I have about Wes Anderson is that I like the style, I like the cast, I like the characters, but at the end, I don't always remember the story itself. I don't know if you feel that way, but for example, I watched recently, I think the latest movie of Wes Anderson I watched was The French Dispatch. I remember most of it, but the story itself, I couldn't really tell. And that's the same for The Moonrise Kingdom. I remember the atmosphere, I remember where it took place, but I can't really tell you the story. You know what I'm saying? It sometimes I feel like that the atmosphere, the style and everything takes over the rest.
That's why I was saying before, like, I have been disappointed by Wes Anderson. Rushmore, to this very day, and this came out in 98, so 26 years, this film has never disappointed me once in any subsequent viewing from that original experience in the movie theater. But I've seen other Wes Anderson films where I don't care if I ever see it again, honestly. There are ones that they don't do it for me. They don't affect me the same way. The characters aren't there the way that they are in Rushmore, or the story isn't there, or there's too much style and not enough substance.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's probably the best way I can surmise his filmography in certain cases. I have a top 5, I have a bottom 5, and that's just where he lives with me.
Yeah, I don't disagree with either one of your commentaries on that. I personally prefer earlier Wes Anderson stuff. That's not to say that I haven't liked aspects of other films that he's done. Like some stuff I think is really good. Nothing, in my opinion, will ever dethrone Rushmore. But I think the trap he's kind of fallen into slightly leans too much on the quirkiness and the style, and kind of what you said. If he could get back with Owen Wilson and do something, I think it would be a return to full form.
Yeah, well, because this film has those elements, but it's not overboard. It's like reeled in where it's tangible enough, where it's believable, and it's not into this other realm of fantasy and surrealism. Like, I still like Max Fischer. He exists in this world that I'm in. There's a Max Fischer out there. There's this very ambitious kid doing these elaborate plays and trying to rally people around him, and he's going to go and conquer the world one day. You know, Max Fischer could be president. I would vote for him because he can get stuff done.
Max Fischer, the character, breathes a rarefied air where I feel like he's almost in the same ballpark as a Ferris Bueller. And it's almost like because we need them to be there. They make the world better. And I don't know a lot of characters that I feel like they have to be there. Like I have to think that they're there. And yeah, I think we need a Ferris Bueller. I think we need a Max Fischer. I think those are pivotal characters, and they just make the world better.
So Bueller and Fischer, 2028, 2032, and then Fischer, 2036. I'm calling it.
I'll take it.
That will about do it for us here today at the Visually Hidden Selects podcast. We will be discussing a completely different film next time, so be sure to head over to our YouTube channel and subscribe so you don't miss any future recommendations. You can catch Stephen Bendler on Instagram over at Steve's Pop Culture Corner. Ann and I, of course, are also on Instagram as well as Letterboxd, so you can follow us over there and find out what we've been watching and see what we think. And until next time, find what you love doing. Keep doing it.